Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 376. Avariya Jataka. Ne herbi en gris, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling at Jetavana, about a ferryman. This man, they say, was foolish and ignorant. He knew not the qualities of the three jewels and of all excellent beings. He was hasty, rough and violent. A certain country brother, wishing to wait on the Buddha, came one evening to the ferry on the Asuravati, and said to the ferryman, "Lay brother, I wish to cross, let me have your boat." "Sir, it is too late, stay here." "Lay brother, I cannot stay here, take me across." The ferryman said angrily, "Come then, sir priest," and took him into the boat. But he steered badly and made the boat ship water, so that the brother's robe was wet, and it was dark before he put him on the farther bank. When the brother reached the monastery, he could not wait on the Buddha that day. Next day he went to the master, saluted and sat on one side. The master gave greeting, and asked when he had come. "Yesterday." "Then why do you not wait on me till today?" When he heard his reason, the master said, "Not now only, but of old also that man was rough, and he annoyed wise men of old as he did you." And when asked, he told an old world tale. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family. When he grew up, he was educated in all the arts at Takasila, and became an ascetic. After living long on wild fruits in the Himalaya, he came to Benares for salt and vinegar. He stayed in the royal garden, and next day went into the city to beg. The king saw him in the palace yard, and being pleased with his deportment, caused him to be brought in and fed. Then he took a promise and made him dwell in the garden, and he came daily to pay respect. The Bodhisattva said to him, "O great king, a king should rule his kingdom with righteousness, eschewing the four evil courses, being zealous and full of patience and kindness and compassion." And with such daily exhortation he spoke two stanzas. "Ne'er be angry, prince of warriors, ne'er be angry, lord of earth. Anger ne'er requite with anger, thus a king is worship worth. In the village, in the forest, on the sea or on the shore, ne'er be angry, prince of warriors, 'tis my counsel evermore." So the Bodhisattva spoke these stanzas to the king every day. The king was pleased with him, and offered him a village whose revenue was 100,000 pieces. But he refused. In this way the Bodhisattva lived for 12 years. Then he thought, "I have stayed too long. I will take a journey through the country and return here." So without telling the king, and only saying to the gardener, "Friend, I weary. I will journey in the country and return. Pray do you tell the king." He went away and came to a ferry on the Ganges. There a foolish ferryman named Avariya lived. He understood neither the merits of good men nor his own gain and loss. When folk would cross the Ganges, he first took them across and then asked for his fare. When they gave him none, he quarreled with them, getting much abuse and blows but little gain. So blind a fool was he. Concerning him, the master in his perfect wisdom spoke the third stanza. The father of Avariya, his boats on Ganges wave. He ferries first the folk across, and then his fare he'll crave. And that is why he earns but strife. A thriftless, luckless knave. The Bodhisattva came to this ferryman and said, "Friend, take me to the other bank." He said, "Priest, what fare will you pay me?" "Friend, I will tell you how to increase your wealth, your welfare, and your virtue." The ferryman thought, "He will certainly give me something." So he took him across and then said, "Pay me the fare." The Bodhisattva said, "Very well, friend." And so telling him first how to increase his wealth, he spoke this stanza. "Ask your fare before the crossing, never on the further shore. Different minds have folk you ferry, different after and before." The ferryman thought, "This will be only his admonition to me. Now he will give me something else." But the Bodhisattva said, "Friend, you have there the way to increase wealth. Now hear the way to increase welfare and virtue." So he spoke a stanza of admonition. "In the village, in the forest, on the sea, and on the shore, ne'er be angry, my good boatman, 'tis my counsel evermore." So having told him the way to increase welfare and virtue, he said, "There you have the way to increase welfare, and the way to increase virtue." Then that stupid one, not reckoning his admonition as anything, said, "Priest, is that what you give me as my fare?" "Yes, friend. I have no use for it, give me something else." "Friend, except that I have nothing else." "Then why did you go on my boat?" He said, and threw the ascetic down on the bank, sitting on his chest and striking his mouth. The master said, "So you see that when the ascetic gave this admonition to the king, he got the boon of a village, and when he gave the same admonition to a stupid ferryman, he got a blow in the mouth. Therefore when one gives this admonition, it must be given to suitable people, not to unsuitable." And so in his perfect wisdom he then spoke a stanza. For counsel good the king bestowed the revenue of a town. The boatman for the same advice has knocked the giver down. As the man was striking the priest, his wife came with his rice, and seeing the ascetic she said, "Husband, this is an ascetic of the king's court. Do not strike him." He was angry, and saying, "You forbid me to strike this false priest," he sprang up and struck her down. The plate of rice fell and broke, and the fruit of her womb miscarried. The people gathered round him and crying, "Murdering rascal!" They bound him and brought him to the king. The king tried him, and caused him to be punished. The master in his perfect wisdom explaining the matter spoke the last stanza. The rice was spilt, his wife was struck, child killed before its birth. To him like fine gold to a beast, counsel was nothing worth. When the master had ended his lesson, he declared the truths. After the truths the brother was established in the fruit of the first path, and identified the birth. At that time the ferryman was the ferryman of today. The king was Ananda, the ascetic was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 377. Setaketu Jataka. Friend, be not angry, etc. The master told this tale at Jetavana, of a deceitful brother. The occasion of the story will appear in the Adala birth. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was a far-famed teacher, and taught the sacred texts to 500 pupils. The senior of them, Setaketu by name, was born of a Brahmin family from the north, and was very proud on account of his caste. One day he went out of the town with other pupils, and when coming in again he saw a Khandala. "Who are you?" he said. "I am a Khandala." He feared the wind after striking the Khandala's body might touch his own body, so he cried, "Curse you, you ill-omened Khandala, get to leeward," and went quickly to windward. But the Khandala was too quick for him, and stood to windward of him. Then he abused and reviled him the more. "Curse you, ill-omened one." The Khandala asked, "Who are you?" "I am a Brahmin student." "Very well, if you are, you will be able to answer me a question." "Yes. If you can't, I will put you between my feet." The Brahmin, feeling confident, said, "Proceed." The Khandala, making the company understand the case, asked the question, "Young Brahmin, what are the quarters?" "The quarters are for the east and the rest." The Khandala said, "I am not asking about that kind of quarter. And you, ignorant even of this, loathe the wind that has struck my body." So he took him by the shoulder and forcing him down put him between his feet. The other pupils told their teacher of the affair. He asked, "Young Setaketu, have you been put between a Khandala's feet?" "Yes, teacher. The son of a slave put me between his feet, saying, 'He doesn't know even the quarters, but now I shall know what to do to him.'" And so he reviled the Khandala angrily. The teacher admonished him, "Young Setaketu, be not angry with him, he is wise. He was asking about another kind of quarter, not this. What you have not seen or heard or understood is far more than what you have." And he spoke 2 stanzas by way of admonition. "Friend, be not angry, anger is not good. Wisdom is more than you have seen or heard. By quarter parents may be understood, and teacher is denoted by the word. The householder who gives food, clothes and drink, whose doors are open, he a quarter is. And quarter in the highest sense, we think, is that last state where misery shall be bliss." So the Bodhisattva explained the quarters to the young Brahmin. But he, thinking, "I was put between a Khandala's feet," left that place and going to Takasila learned all the arts from a far-famed teacher. With that teacher's permission he left Takasila and wandered learning all practical arts. Coming to a frontier village, he found 500 ascetics dwelling near it, and was ordained by them. All their arts, texts and practices he learnt, and they accompanied him to Benares. Next day he went to the palace yard begging. The king, pleased with the ascetic's deportment, gave them food in the palace and lodging in his garden. One day he said, sending them food, "I will salute your reverences this evening in the garden." Setaketu went to the garden and collecting the ascetics said, "Sirs, the king is coming today. Now by once conciliating kings a man may live happily all the years of his life. So now some of you do the swinging penance, some lie on thorn beds, some endure the 5 fires, some practice the mortification by squatting, some the act of diving, some repeat texts." And after these orders he set himself at the door of the hut on a chair with a head rest, put a book with a brilliant colored wrapping on a painted stand, and explained texts as they were inquired about by 4 or 5 intelligent pupils. At that moment the king arrived, and seeing them doing these false penances he was delighted. He came up to Setaketu, saluted him and sat on one side. Then talking to his family priest he spoke the 3rd stanza. With unclean teeth, and goatskin garb and hair, all matted, muttering holy words in peace. Surely no human means to good they spare. They know the truth, and they have one release. The priest heard this and spoke the 4th stanza. A learned sage may do ill deeds, O king. A learned sage may fail to follow right. 1,000 Vedas will not safety bring, failing just works or save from evil plight. When the king heard this, he took away his favor from the ascetics. Setaketu thought, "This king took a liking to the ascetics, but this priest has destroyed it as if he had cut it with an axe. I must talk to him." So talking to him he spoke the 5th stanza. A learned sage may do ill deeds, O king. A learned sage may fail to follow right. You say, then Vedas are a useless thing. Just works with self-restraint are requisite. The priest hearing this, spoke the 6th stanza. Nay, Vedas are not useless utterly, though works with self-restraint true doctrine is. Study of Vedas lifts man's name on high, but 'tis by conduct that he reaches bliss. So the priest refuted Setaketu's doctrine. He made them all laymen, gave them shields and weapons, and appointed them to be attendants on the king as superior officers. And hence they say comes the race of superior officers. After the lesson the master identified the birth. At that time Setaketu was the cheating priest, the Kandala was Sariputta, and the king's priest was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipata, 378, Darimuka Jataka, Pleasures of Sense, etc. This tale was told by the master while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning the great renunciation. The incident that led to the story has been told before. Once upon a time the Magadha king reigned in Rajagaha. The Bodhisattva was born of his chief queen, and they called him Prince Brahmadatta. On the day of his birth, the family priest also had a son. His face was very beautiful, so they called him Darimuka. Both grew up in the king's court dear friends together. And in the 16th year they went to Takasila, and learned all the arts. Then, meaning to acquire all practical usages and understand country observances, they wandered through towns, villages and all the land. So they reached Benares, and staying in a temple they went into the city next day to beg. In one of the houses in the city, the people of the house had cooked rice porridge, and prepared seats to feed Brahmins, and give them portions. These people seeing the 2 youths begging thought, the Brahmins have come. And making them come and laid a white cloth on the Bodhisattva's seat, and a red rug on Darimuka's. Darimuka observed the omen, and understood that his friend should be king in Benares, and himself commander of the army. They ate and took their portions, and then with a blessing left, and went to the king's garden. The Bodhisattva lay on the royal stone seat. Darimuka sat stroking his feet. The king of Benares had been dead 7 days. The family priest had performed funeral rites, and sent out the festal car for 7 days, as there was no heir to the throne. This ceremony of the car will be explained in the Mahajanaka birth. This car left the city and reached the gate of the garden, accompanied by an army of the 4 divisions, and by the music of hundreds of instruments. Darimuka, hearing the music, thought, "This car is coming for my friend. He will be king today, and give me the commander's place. But why should I be a layman? I will go away and become an ascetic." So without a word to the Bodhisattva, he went on one side and stood concealed. The priest stayed the car at the gate of the garden, and entering saw the Bodhisattva lying on the royal seat. Observing the auspicious marks on his feet, he thought, "He has merit, and is worthy to be king even of the 4 continents with 2,000 islands around them. But what is his courage?" So he made all the instruments sound their loudest. The Bodhisattva woke, and taking the cloth from his face, He saw the multitude. Then covering his face again he lay down for a little, and rising when the car stopped sat cross-legged on the seat. The priest resting on his knee said, "Lord, the kingdom falls to you. Why is there no heir?" "No, Lord." "Then it is well." And so he accepted, and they anointed him there in the garden. In his great glory he forgot Darimuka. He mounted the car and drove amid the multitude in solemn form round the city. Then stopping at the palace gate, he arranged the places of the courtiers, and went up to the terrace. At that instant Darimuka, seeing the garden now empty, came, and sat on the royal seat in the garden. A withered leaf fell before him. In it he came to see the principles of decay and death, grasped the three marks of things, and making the earth re-echo with joy, he entered on Paxabodhi. At that instant the characters of a householder vanished from him. A miraculous bowl and frock fell from the sky and clave to his body. At once he had the 8 requisites and the perfect deportment of a centenarian monk, and by miracle he flew into the air, and went to the cave Nandiyamiga in the Himalaya. The Bodhisattva ruled his kingdom with righteousness, but the greatness of his glory infatuated him, and for 40 years he forgot Darimuka. In the 40th year he remembered him, and saying, "I have a friend named Darimuka. Where is he now?" He longed to see him. Thenceforth even in the seraglio, and in the assembly he would say, "Where is my friend Darimuka? I will give great honor to the man who tells me of his abode." Another 10 years passed while he remembered Darimuka from time to time. Darimuka, though now a Paxabuddha, after 50 years reflected and knew that his friend remembered him, and thinking, he is now old and increased with sons and daughters, I will go and preach the law to him and ordain him. He went by miracle through the air, and lighting in the garden he sat like a golden image on the stone seat. The gardener seeing him came up and asked, "Sir, whence come you?" "From the cave Nandiyamiga." "Who are you?" "Friend, I am Darimuka the Paksika." "Sir, do you know our king?" "Yes, he was my friend in my layman days." "Sir, the king longs to see you. I will tell him of your coming." "Go and do so." He went and told the king that Darimuka was come, and sitting on the stone seat. The king said, "So my friend is come, I shall see him." So he mounted his car, and with a great retinue went to the garden, and saluting the Paxabuddha with kindly greeting he sat on one side. The Paxabuddha said, "Brahmadatta, do you rule your kingdom with righteousness, never follow evil courses or oppress the people for money, and do good deeds with charity?" And after kindly greeting, "Brahmadatta, you are old, it is time for you to renounce pleasures and be ordained." So he preached the law and spoke the first stanza. "Pleasures of sense are but morass and mire, the triply rooted terror them I call. Vapor and dust I have proclaimed them, sire. Become a brother and forsake them all." Hearing this, the king explaining that he was bound by desires spoke the second stanza. "Infatuate, bound and deeply stained am I, Brahmin with pleasures, fearful they may be, but I love life, and cannot them deny. Good works I undertake continually." Then Darimuka, though the Bodhisattva said, "I cannot be ordained," did not reject him and exhorted him yet again. He who rejects the counsel of his friend, who pities him, and would avert his doom, thinking this world is better, finds no end. Foolish of long rebirths within the womb, that fearful place of punishment is his. Full of all filth held evil by the good, the greedy their desires can ne'er dismiss. The flesh imprisons all the carnal brood. So Darimuka the Paxabuddha, showing the misery, rising from conception and quickening. To show next the misery of birth spoke a stanza and a half. "Covered with blood, and with gross foulness stained, all mortal beings issue from the birth. Whatever they touch thereafter is ordained, to bring them pain and sorrow on the earth. I speak what I have seen, not what I hear. From others, I remember times of old." Now the master in his perfect wisdom said. So the Paxabuddha helped the king with good words, and at the end spoke the remaining half stanza. Darimuka did to Sumetha's ear wisdom in many a stanza sweet unfold. The Paxabuddha, showing the misery of desires, making his words understood, said, "O king, be ordained or not, but anyhow I have told the wretchedness of desires and the blessings of ordination, be thou zealous." And so like a golden royal goose he rose in the air, and treading on clouds he reached the Nandiyamiga cave. The great being made on his head the salutations resplendent with the 10 finger nails put together, and bowing down stood till Darimuka passed out of sight. Then he sent for his eldest son, and gave him the kingdom. And leaving desires, while a great multitude was weeping and lamenting, he went to the Himalaya, and building a hut of leaves he was ordained as an ascetic. Then in no long time he gained the faculties and attainments, and at his life's end he went to Brahma's heaven. The lesson ended, the master declared the truths. Then many attained the first path and the rest. And he identified the birth. At that time the king was myself. Stories of the Buddha's former births. Book 6 Kanipada, 379 Neru Jataka. Ravens and crows, etc. The master told this tale in Jetavana concerning a certain brother. The story is that he got the forms of meditation from the master, and then went to a frontier village. There the people, pleased with his deportment, fed him, built him a hut in the wood, and exacting a promise, made him live there, and gave him great honor. But they forsook him for the teachers of the permanence of matter, afterwards forsaking those for the sect who deny immortality, and those again for the sect of naked ascetics. For teachers of all these sects came among them in turn. So he was unhappy among those people who knew not good and evil. And after the rains and the pavarana he went back to the master, and at his request told him where he had stayed during the rains, and that he had been unhappy among people who knew not good and evil. The master said, sages of old, even when born as beasts, stayed not a day among those who knew not good and evil. Why have you done so? And so he told the tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a golden goose. Along with his younger brother, he lived on the hill Setaketu, and fed on wild paddy in the Himalaya. One day in their flight back to Setaketu, they saw the golden mountain Neru, and settled on its summit. Around the mountain dwell birds and beasts of various kinds for feeding ground. From the time of their coming to the mountain onwards, they became golden of hue from its luster. The Bodhisattva's brother saw this, but being ignorant of the cause said, "Now what is the cause here?" And so talking to his brother he spoke 2 stanzas. Ravens and crows, and we the best of birds, when on this mountain, all appear the same. Mean jackals rival tigers and their lords. The lions, what can be the mountain's name? The Bodhisattva hearing this spoke the 3rd stanza. Noblest of mountains, narrow is its height. All animals are here made fair to sight. The younger one hearing this spoke the remaining 3 stanzas. Where'er the good find honor small or none, or less than others live not but be gone. Dull and clever, brave and coward, all are honored equally. Undiscriminating mountain, good men will not stay on thee. Best, indifferent and meanest narrow does not separate. Undiscriminating narrow we alas, must leave thee straight. With this they both flew up and went to Setaketu. After the lesson, the master proclaimed the truths and identified the birth. At the close of the truths, that brother was established in the fruition of the first path. At that time the younger goose was Ananda, the elder was myself. Stories of the Buddha's former births. Book 6 Kanipada, 380, Asanka Jataka. In heavenly garden, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling at Jetavana, concerning the temptation of a brother by his former wife. The occasion will appear in the Indriya birth. The master found that the brother was backsliding owing to thoughts of his wife. So he said, "Sir, this woman does you harm. Formerly also for her sake you sacrificed an army of the 4 divisions, and dwelt in the Himalaya 3 years in much misery." So he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family at a village of that country. When he grew up, he learned the arts at Takasila, became an ascetic, and reaching the faculties and attainments lived on roots and fruits in the Himalaya. At that time a being of perfect merit fell from the heaven of the 33, and was conceived as a girl inside a lotus in a pool. And when the other lotuses grew old and fell, that one grew great and stood. The ascetic coming to bathe saw it and thought, "The other lotuses fall, but this one is grown great and stands. Why is this?" So he put on his bathing dress and crossed to it. Then opening the lotus he saw the girl. Feeling towards her as to a daughter he took her to his hut, and tended her. When she came to 16 years, she was beautiful, and in her beauty excelled the hue of man, but attained not the hue of gods. Saka came to wait on the Bodhisattva. He saw the maiden, asked and was told the way in which she was found, and then asked, "What ought she to receive?" "A dwelling place and supply of raiment, ornament and food, O sir." He answered, "Very well, Lord," and created a crystal palace for her dwelling, made for her a bed, raiment and ornament, food and drink divine. The palace descended and rested on the ground when she was going up. When she had gone up it ascended and stayed in the air. She did various services to the Bodhisattva, as she lived in the palace. A forester saw this and asked, "What is this person to you, Lord?" "My daughter." So he went to Benares and told the king, "O king, I have seen in the Himalaya a certain ascetic's daughter of such beauty." The king was caught by hearing this, and making the forester his guide, he went with an army of the 4 divisions to that place. And pitching a camp he took the forester, and his retinue of ministers, and entered the hermitage. He saluted the Bodhisattva and said, "Lord, women are a stain to the religious life. I will tend your daughter." Now the Bodhisattva had given the maiden the name Asanka, because she was brought to him by his crossing the water owing to his doubt. "Asanka, what is in this lotus?" He did not say to the king directly, "Take her and go," but said, "If you know this maiden's name, O great king, take her and go." "Lord, if you tell it I shall know." "I shall not tell it, but when you know it take her and depart." The king agreed, and thenceforth considered along with his ministers, "What may be her name?" He put forward all names hard to guess, and talked with the Bodhisattva, saying, "Such and such will be her name." But the Bodhisattva said nay and refused him. So a year passed while the king was considering. Lions and other beasts seized his elephants and horses and men. There was danger from snakes, danger from flies, and many died worn out with cold. The king said to the Bodhisattva, "What need have I of her?" and took his way. The maiden Asanka stood at an open crystal window. The king seeing her said, "We cannot find your name. Live here in the Himalaya, we will depart." "Great king, if you go you will never find a wife like me. In the heaven of the 33, in the Siddhalata garden, there is a creeper named Asavati. In its fruit a divine drink is born, and they who drink of it once are intoxicated for 4 months, and lie on a divine couch. It bears fruit once in 1,000 years, and the sons of the gods, though given to strong drink, bear with their thirst for that divine drink, saying, 'We shall reap fruit from this,' and come constantly throughout the 1,000 years to watch the plant, saying, 'Is it well?' But you grow discontented in 1 year. He who wins the fruit of his hope is happy, be not discontented yet." And so she spoke 3 stanzas. In heavenly garden grows Asavati, once in 1,000 years no more the tree bears fruit, for it the gods wait patiently. Hope on, O king, the fruit of hope is sweet. A bird hoped on and never owned defeat. His wish though far away he won complete. Hope on, O king, the fruit of hope is sweet. The king was caught by her words. He gathered his ministers again, and guessed at the name, making 10 guesses each time till another year was past. But her name was not among the 10, and so the Bodhisattva refused him. Again the king said, "What need have I of her?" and took his way. She showed herself at the window, and the king said, "You stay, we will depart." "Why depart, great king? I cannot find your name." "Great king, why can you not find it? Hope is not without success. A crane staying on a hilltop won his wish. Why can you not win it?" "Endure, great king." A crane had its feeding ground in a lotus pool, but flying up lit on a hilltop. He stayed there that day and next day thought, "I am happily settled on this hilltop. If without going down I stay here finding food and drinking water, and so dwell this day, oh, it would be delightful." That very day Saka, king of heaven, had crushed the Asuras, and being now lord in the heaven of the 33 was thinking, "My wishes have come to the pitch of fulfillment. Is there anyone in the forest whose wishes are unfulfilled?" So considering, he saw that crane and thought, "I will bring this bird's wishes to the pitch of fulfillment." Not far from the crane's place of perch there is a stream, and Saka sent the stream in full flood to the hilltop. So the crane without moving ate fish and drank water, and dwelt there that day. Then the water fell and went away. So, great king, the crane won fruition of that hope of his. And why will you not win it? "Hope on," she said, with the rest of the verse. The king, hearing her tale, was caught by her beauty and attracted by her words. He could not go away, but gathering his ministers, and getting 100 names, spent another year in guessing with these 100 names. At the end of 3 years he came to the Bodhisattva and asked, "Will that name be among the 100, Lord?" "You do not know it, great king." He saluted the Bodhisattva, and saying, "We will go now," he took his way. The maiden Asanka again stood by a crystal window. The king saw her and said, "You stay, we will depart." "Why, great king? You satisfy me with words, but not with love. Caught by your sweet words, I have spent here 3 years. Now I will depart." And he uttered these stanzas. "You please me, but with words and not in deed. The scentless flower, though fair, is but a weed. Promise fair without performance, on his friends one throws away. Never giving, ever hoarding, such as friendship's sure decay. Men should speak when they will act, not promise what they cannot do. If they talk without performing, wise men see them through and through. My troops are wasted, all my stores are spent. I doubt my life is spoilt. 'Tis time I went." The maiden Asanka, hearing the king's words, said, "Great king, you know my name. You have just said it. Tell my father my name. Take me and go." So talking with the king, she said, "Prince, you have said the word that is my name. Come, king. My father will allow the claim." The king went to the Bodhisattva, saluted and said, "Lord, your daughter is named Asanka. From the time you know her name, take her and go, great king." He saluted the Bodhisattva, and coming to the crystal palace he said, "Lady, your father has given you to me, come now." "Come, great king, I will get my father's leave," she said, and coming down from the palace she saluted the Bodhisattva, got his consent and came to the king. The king took her to Benares and lived happily with her, increased with sons and daughters. The Bodhisattva continued in unbroken meditation, and was born in the Brahma world. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. After the truths, the brother was established in the fruition of the first path. Asanka was the former wife. The king was the discontented brother. The ascetic was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada, 381 Migalopa Jataka. Your ways, my son, etc. The master told this tale in Jetavana, of an unruly brother. The master asked the brother, "Are you really unruly?" He said, "Yes, Lord." And the master saying, "You are not unruly for the first time. Formerly too, through unruliness you did not the bidding of the wise, and met your death by the Varamba winds," told an old world tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a vulture by name Avariya Jataka, and dwelt among a retinue of vultures in Gijjapapada, Vulture Mountain. His son, Migalopa by name, was exceedingly strong and mighty. He flew high above the reach of the other vultures. They told their king that his son flew very far. He called Migalopa, and saying, "Son, they say you fly too high. If you do, you will bring death on yourself," spoke 3 stanzas. "Your ways, my son, to me unsafe appear. You soar too high, above our proper sphere. When earth is but a square field to your sight, turn back, my son, and dare no higher flight. Other birds on soaring pinions lofty flight ere now have tried. Struck by furious wind and tempest they have perished in their pride." Migalopa through disobedience did not do his father's bidding, but rising and rising he passed the limit his father told him, clove even the black winds when he met them, and flew upwards till he met the Varamba winds in the face. They struck him, and at their mere stroke he fell into pieces and disappeared in the air. His aged father's wise commands disdained. Beyond the black, Varamba winds he gained. His wife, his children, all his household heard, all came to ruin through that froward bird. So they who heed not what their elders say, like this proud vulture beyond bounds astray, meet ruin, when right rules they disobey. After the lesson the master identified the birth. At that time Migalopa was the unruly brother. Avariya was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada, 382, Sirikalakanijjatika Jataka. Who is this, etc. The master told this tale in Jetavana concerning Anathapindika. From the time when he was established in the fruition of the first path, he kept all the 5 first commandments unbroken. So also did his wife, his sons and daughters, his hired servants and his workpeople. One day in the Hall of Truth, they began to discuss whether Anathapindika was pure in his walk, and his household also. The master came and was told their subject. So he said, "Brethren, the wise men of old had pure households," and told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was a merchant, giving gifts, keeping the commands, and performing the fast day duties. And so his wife kept the 5 commands, and so also did his sons, his daughters and his servants and workpeople. So he was called the merchant Sisaparivara, pure household. He thought, if one of purer morals than I should come, it would not be proper to give him my couch to sit on or my bed to lie on, but to give him one pure and unused. So he had an unused couch and bed prepared on one side in his presence chamber. At that time in the heaven of the 4 kings Kalakani, daughter of Virapaka, and Siri, daughter of Dhadaratha, both together took many perfumes and garlands, and went on the lake Anotatta to play there. Now on that lake there are many bathing places. The Buddhas bathe at their own place, the Pakska Buddhas at theirs, the brethren at theirs, the ascetics at theirs, the gods of the 6 Kama heavens at theirs, and the goddesses at theirs. These 2 came thither, and began to quarrel as to which of them should bathe first. Kalakani said, "I rule the world. It is proper that I bathe first." Siri said, "I preside over the course of conduct that gives lordship to mankind. It is proper that I bathe first." Then both said, "The 4 kings will know which of us ought to bathe first." So they went to them and asked which of the 2 was worthy to bathe first in Anotatta. Dhadaratha and Virapaka said, "We cannot decide," and laid the duty on Varula and Vesavanna. They too said, "We cannot decide, we will send it to our Lord's feet." So they sent it to Saka. He heard their tale and thought, "Those 2 are the daughters of my vassals. I cannot decide this case." So he said to them, "There is in Benares a merchant called Sisaparivara. In his house are prepared an unused couch and bed. She who can first sit or lie there is the proper one to bathe first." Kalakani hearing this on the instant put on blue raiment, and used blue ointment, and decked herself with blue jewels. She descended from the heaven as on a stone from a catapult, and just after the mid-watch of night she stood in the air, diffusing a blue light, not far from the merchant who was lying on a couch in the presence chamber of his mansion. The merchant looked and saw her, but to his eyes she was ungracious and unlovely. Talking to her he spoke the first stanza. "Who is this so dark of hue, so unlovely to the view? Who are you whose daughter, say? How are we to know you, pray?" Hearing him, Kalakani spoke the second stanza. "The great King Virapaka is my sire. I am misfortune Kalakani dire. Give me the house room near you I desire." Then the Bodhisattva spoke the third stanza. "What the conduct, what the ways, of the men with whom you dwell? This is what my question prays. We will mark the answer well." Then she, explaining her own qualities, spoke the fourth stanza. "The hypocrite, the wanton, the morose, the man of envy, greed and treachery, such are the friends I love, and I dispose their gains that they may perish utterly." She spoke also the fifth, sixth, and seventh stanzas. "And dearer still are ire and hate to me, slander and strife, libel and cruelty, the shiftless wight who knows not his own good, resenting counsel, to his betters rude, the man whom folly drives, whom friends despise. He is my friend, in him my pleasure lies." Then the great being, blaming her, spoke the eighth stanza. "Kali, depart. There's naught to please you here. To other lands and cities disappear." Kalakani, hearing him, was sorrowful and spoke another stanza. "I know you well. There's naught to please me here. Others are luckless, who amass much gear. My brother God, and I will make it disappear." When she had gone, Siri the goddess, coming with raiment and ointment of golden hue and ornament of golden brightness, to the door of the presence chamber, diffusing yellow light, rested with even feet on level ground and stood respectful. The Bodhisattva, seeing her, repeated the first stanza. "Who is this divine of hue, on the ground so firm and true? Who are you whose daughter, say? How are we to know you, pray?" Siri, hearing him, spoke the second stanza. "The great King Dhadaratha is my sire. Fortune and luck am I, and wisdom men admire. Grant me the house room with you I desire." Then, "What the conduct, what the ways, of the men with whom you dwell? This is what my question prays. We will mark your answer well. He who in cold and heat, in wind and sun, mid thirst and hunger, snake and poison fly. His present duty night and day hath done. With him I dwell and love him faithfully. Gentle and friendly, righteous, liberal, guileless and honest, upright, winning, bland, meek in high place. I tinge his fortunes all, like waves their hue through ocean that expand. To friend or unfriend, better, like or worse, helper or foe, by dark or open day. Whoso is kind, without harsh word or curse, I am his friend, living or dead alway. But if a fool have won some love from me, and waxes proud and vain, his froward path of wantonness I flee, like filthy stain. Each man's fortune and misfortune are his own work, not another's. Neither fortune nor misfortune can a man make for his brothers. Such was Siri's answer when questioned by the merchant. The Bodhisattva rejoiced at Siri's words and said, "Here is the pure seat and bed proper for you. Sit and lie down there." She stayed there, and in the morning departed to the heaven of the four great kings, and bathed first in Lake Anotatta. The bed used by Siri was called Sirisaya. Hence is the origin of Sirisiana, and for this reason it is so called to this day. After the lesson the master identified the birth. At that time the goddess Siri was Upalavanna, the merchant Susaparivara was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 383, Kukkuta Jataka. Bird with wings, etc. The master told this tale in Jetavana, concerning a brother who longed for the world. The master asked him, "Why do you long for the world?" "Lord, through passion, for I saw a woman adorned." "Brother, women are like cats, deceiving and cajoling to bring to ruin one who has come into their power." So he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a cock, and lived in the forest with a retinue of many hundred cocks. Not far away lived a she-cat, and she deceived by devices the other cocks except the Bodhisattva and ate them. But the Bodhisattva did not fall into her power. She thought, "This cock is very crafty, but he knows not that I am crafty and skillful in device. It is good that I cajole him, saying, 'I will be your wife,' and so eat him when he comes into my power." She went to the root of the tree where he perched, and praying him in a speech preceded by praise of his beauty, she spoke the first stanza. "Bird with wings that flash so gaily, crest that droops so gracefully, I will be your wife for nothing. Leave the bough and come to me." The Bodhisattva hearing her thought, "She has eaten all my relatives. Now she wishes to cajole me and eat me. I will get rid of her." So he spoke the second stanza. "Lady fair and winning, you have 4 feet. I have only 2. Beasts and birds should never marry. For some other husband sue." Then she thought, "He is exceedingly crafty. By some device or other I will deceive him and eat him." So she spoke the third stanza. "I will bring thee youth and beauty, pleasant speech and courtesy. Honored wife or simple slave girl, at thy pleasure deal with me." Then the Bodhisattva thought, "It is best to revile her and drive her away." So he spoke the fourth stanza. "Thou hast drunk my kindred's blood, and robbed and slain them cruelly. Honored wife, there is no honor in your heart when wooing me." She was driven away, and did not endure to look at him again. So when they see a hero women sly, compare the cat and cock, to tempt him try. He that to great occasion fails to rise, 'neath foeman's feet in sorrow prostrate lies. One prompt a crisis in his fate to see, as cock from cat, escapes his enemy. These are stanzas inspired by perfect wisdom. His lesson ended. The master declared the truths and identified the birth. After the truths, the backsliding brother was established in the fruition of the first path. At that time the cock was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 384, Dhammaddhaja Jataka. Practice virtue, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, of a deceitful brother. He said, "Brethren, this man is not deceitful now for the first time." So he told an old world tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a bird. When he grew up he lived amidst a retinue of birds on an island in the middle of the sea. Certain merchants of Kasi, got a traveled crow, and started on a voyage by sea. In the midst of the sea the ship was wrecked. The crow reached that island and thought, "Here is a great flock of birds. It is good that I use deceit on them and eat their eggs and young." So he descended in their midst and opening his mouth stood with one foot on the ground. "Who are you, master?" they asked. "I am a holy person. Why do you stand on one foot? If I put down the other one, the earth could not bear me. Then why do you stand with your mouth open? We eat no other food. We only drink the wind." And with this he called these birds and saying, "I will give you a sermon, you listen." He spoke the first stanza by way of a sermon. "Practice virtue, brethren, bless you. Practice virtue, I repeat. Hereinafter virtuous people have their happiness complete." The birds, not knowing that he said this with deceit to eat their eggs, praised him and spoke the second stanza. "Surely a righteous fowl, a blessed bird. He preaches on one leg the holy word." The birds, believing that wicked one, said, "Sir, you take no other food but feed on wind only. So pray watch our eggs and young." So they went to their feeding ground. That sinner when they went away ate his belly full of their eggs and young. And when they came again he stood calmly on one foot with his mouth open. The birds not seeing their children when they came made a great outcry. "Who can be eating them?" But saying, "This crow is a holy person," they do not even suspect him. Then one day the Bodhisattva thought, "There was nothing wrong here formerly. It only began since this one came. It is good to try him." So making as if he were going to feed with the other birds he turned back and stood in a secret place. The crow, confident because the birds were gone, rose and went and ate the eggs and young. Then coming back stood on one foot with his mouth open. When the birds came, their king assembled them all and said, "I examined today the danger to our children, and I saw this wicked crow eating them. We will seize him." So getting the birds together and surrounding the crow he said, "If he flees, let us seize him," and spoke the remaining stanzas. "You know not his ways, when this bird you praise. You spoke with foolish tongue. Virtue, he'll say, and virtue I. But he eats our eggs and young. The things he preaches with his voice, his members never do. His virtue is an empty noise, his righteousness untrue. At heart a hypocrite, his language charms. A black snake slinking to his hole is he. He cousins by his outward coat of arms. The country folk in their simplicity, strike him down with beak and pinion. Tear him with your claws. Death to such a dastard minion. Traitor to our cause." With these words the leader of the birds himself sprang up, and struck the crow in the head with his beak, and the rest struck him with beaks and feet and wings. So he died. At the end of the lesson, the master identified the birth. At that time the crow was the deceitful brother. The king of the birds was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 385. Nandiyamiga Jataka. Will you go to the king's park? Etc. The master told this in Jetavana, of a brother who supported his mother. He asked the brother, "Is it true that you support lay folk?" "Yes, Lord." "What are they?" "My father and mother, Lord." Well done, brother. You keep up the rule of the wise men of old. For they too even when born as beasts gave their life for their parents. And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time when the Kosala king was reigning over the Kosalas in Saketa, Oud, the Bodhisattva was born as a deer. When he grew up he was named Nandiyamiga, and being excellent in character and conduct he supported his father and mother. The Kosala king was intent on the chase, and went every day to hunt with a great retinue, so that his people could not follow farming and their trades. The people gathered together and consulted, saying, "Sirs, this king of ours is destroying our trades. Our home life is perishing. What if we were to enclose the Anjanavana park, providing a gate, digging a tank and sowing grass there, then go into the forest with sticks and clubs in our hands, beat the thickets, and so expelling the deer and driving them along force them into the park like cows into a pen? Then we would close the gate, send word to the king and go about our trades." "That is the way," they said. And so with one will they made the park ready, and then entering the wood enclosed a space of a league each way. At the time Nandiya had taken his father and mother into a little thicket, and was lying on the ground. The people with various shields and weapons in their hands encircled the thicket arm to arm, and some entered it looking for deer. Nandiyya saw them and thought, "It is good that I should abandon life today and give it for my parents." So rising and saluting his parents, he said, "Father and mother, these men will see us three if they enter this thicket. You can survive only in one way, and your life is best. I will give you the gift of your life, standing by the skirts of the thicket, and going out as soon as they beat it. Then they will think there can be only one deer in this little thicket, and so will not enter. Be heedful." So he got their permission and stood ready to run. As soon as the thicket was beaten by the people standing at its skirts, and shouting, he came out, and they, thinking there would be only one deer there, did not enter. Nandiyya went among the other deer, and the people drove them along into the park. Then closing the gate, they told the king, and went to their own homes. From that time the king always went himself and shot a deer. Then he either took it and went away, or sent for it and had it fetched. The deer arranged their turns, and he to whom the turn came stood on one side, and they take him when shot. Nandiyya drank water from the tank, and ate the grass, but his turn did not come yet. Then after many days his parents, longing to see him, thought, "Our son Nandiyya, king of deer, was strong as an elephant and of perfect health. If he is alive he will certainly leap the fence and come to see us. We will send him word." So they stood near the road, and seeing a Brahmin, they asked in human voice, "Sir, where are you going?" "To Setaketu," he said. So sending a message to their son, they spoke the first stanza. "Will you go to the king's park, Brahmin, when out you're traveling through? Find out our dear son Nandiyya, and tell him our message true. Your father and mother are stricken in years, and their hearts are fain for you." The Brahmin, saying, "It is well," accepted, and going to Setaketu next day entered the park, and asked, "Which is Nandiyya?" The deer came near him and said, "I." The Brahmin told his message. Nandiyya, hearing it, said, "I might go, Brahmin. I might certainly leap the fence and go. But I have enjoyed regular food and drink from the king, and this stands to me as a debt. Besides, I have lived long among these deer, and it is improper for me to go away without doing good to this king and to them, or without showing my strength. But when my turn comes I will do good to them and come gladly." And so explaining this, he spoke two stanzas. "I owe the king my daily drink and food. I cannot go till I have made it good. To the king's arrows I'll expose my side, then see my mother and be justified." The Brahmin, hearing this, went away. Afterwards, on the day when his turn came, the king with a great retinue came into the park. The Bodhisattva stood on one side, and the king, saying, "I will shoot the deer," fitted a sharp arrow to the string. The Bodhisattva did not run away as other animals do when scared by the fear of death, but fearless, and making his charity his guide, he stood firm, exposing his side with mighty ribs. The king, owing to the efficacy of his love, could not discharge the arrow. The Bodhisattva said, "Great king, why do you not shoot the arrow?" "Shoot, king of deer, I cannot." "Then see the merit of the virtuous, O great king." Then the king, pleased with the Bodhisattva, dropped his bow and said, "This senseless length of wood knows your merit. Shall I, who have sense and am a man, not know it? Forgive me, I give you security. Great king, you give me security, but what will this herd of deer in the park do? I give it to them too." So the Bodhisattva, having gained security for all deer in the park, for birds in the air and fishes in the water, in the way described in the Nigrata birth, established the king in the 5 commands and said, "Great king, it is good for a king to rule a kingdom by forsaking the ways of wrongdoing, not offending against the 10 kingly virtues, and acting with just righteousness, alms, morals, charity, justice, and penitence, peace, mildness, mercy, meekness, patience. These virtues planted in my soul I feel, then springs up love and perfect inward weal." With these words he showed forth the kingly virtues in the form of a stanza, and after staying some days with the king, he sent a golden drum round the town, proclaiming the gift of security to all beings, and then saying, "O king, be watchful." He went to see his parents. "Of old and out a king of deer I hight, by name and nature Nandiyya delight. To kill me in his deer park came the king. His bow was bent, his arrow on the string. To the king's arrow I exposed my side, then saw my mother and was justified." These were the stanzas inspired by perfect wisdom. At the end, The master declared the truths and identified the birth. At the end of the truths, the brother who supported his mother was established in the first path. At that time the father and mother were members of the royal family. The Brahmin was Sariputta, the king Ananda, the dear myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 386 Kharaputta Jataka. Goats are stupid, etc. The master told this tale in Jetavana, concerning temptation of a brother by his former wife. When the brother confessed that he was longing for the world, the master said, "Brother, this woman does you harm. Formerly also you came into the fire through her, and were saved from death by sages." So he told an old tale. Once upon a time when a king named Sanaka was reigning in Benares, the bodhisattva was Saka. The king Sanaka was friendly with a certain Naga king. This Naga king, they say, left the Naga world and ranged the earth seeking food. The village boy seeing him said, "This is a snake," and struck him with clods and other things. The king, going to amuse himself in his garden, saw them, and being told they were beating a snake, said, "Don't let them beat him, drive them away." And this was done. So the Naga king got his life, and when he went back to the Naga world, he took many jewels, and coming at midnight to the king's bedchamber, he gave them to him, saying, "I got my life through you." So he made friendship with the king and came again and again to see him. He appointed one of his Naga girls, insatiate in pleasures, to be near the king and protect him. And he gave the king a charm, saying, "If ever you do not see her, repeat this charm." One day the king went to the garden with the Naga girl, and was amusing himself in the lotus tank. The Naga girl, seeing a water snake, quitted her human shape, and made love with him. The king, not seeing the girl, said, "Where is she gone?" and repeated the spell. Then he saw her in her misconduct and struck her with a piece of bamboo. She went in anger to the Naga world, and when she was asked, "Why are you come?" she said, "Your friend struck me on the back because I did not do his bidding," shewing the mark of the blow. The Naga king, not knowing the truth, called 4 Naga youths and sent them with orders to enter Sanaka's bedchamber and destroy him like chaff by the breath of their nostrils. They entered the chamber at the royal bedtime. As they came in, the king was saying to the queen, "Lady, do you know where the Naga girl has gone?" "King, I do not. Today when we were bathing in the tank, she quitted her shape and misconduct herself with a water snake. I said, 'Don't do that,' and struck her with a piece of bamboo to give her a lesson. And now I fear she may have gone to the Naga world, and told some lie to my friend, destroying his goodwill to me." The young Nagas, hearing this, turned back at once to the Naga world and told their king. He, being moved, went instantly to the king's chamber, told him all, and was forgiven. Then Bhi said, "In this way I make amends," and gave the king a charm giving knowledge of all sounds. "This, O king, is a priceless spell. If you give anyone this spell, you will at once enter the fire and die." The king said, "It is well," and accepted it. From that time he understood the voice even of ants. One day he was sitting on the dais eating solid food with honey and molasses. And a drop of honey, a drop of molasses, and a morsel of cake fell on the ground. An ant, seeing this, comes crying, "The king's honey jar is broken on the dais, his molasses cart and cake cart are upset. Come and eat honey and molasses and cake." The king, hearing the cry, laughed. The queen, being near him, thought, "What has the king seen that he laughs?" When the king had eaten his solid food and bathed and sat down cross-legged, a fly said to his wife, "Come, lady, let us enjoy love." She said, "Excuse me for a little, husband. They will soon be bringing perfumes to the king. As he perfumes himself, some powder will fall at his feet. I will stay there and become fragrant. Then we will enjoy ourselves lying on the king's back." The king, hearing the voice, laughed again. The queen thought again, "What has he seen that he laughs?" Again, when the king was eating his supper, a lump of rice fell on the ground. The ants cried, "A wagon of rice has broken in the king's palace, and there is none to eat it." The king, hearing this, laughed again. The queen took a golden spoon and, helping him, reflected, "Is it at the sight of me that the king laughs?" She went to the bedchamber with the king, and at bedtime she asked, "Why did you laugh, O king?" He said, "What have you to do with why I laugh?" but being asked again and again he told her. Then she said, "Give me your spell of knowledge." He said, "It cannot be given." But though repulsed she pressed him again. The king said, "If I give you this spell, I shall die. Even though you die, give it me." The king, being in the power of womankind, saying, "It is well," consented and went to the park in a chariot, saying, "I shall enter the fire after giving away this spell." At that moment Saka, king of gods, looked down on the earth and seeing this case said, "This foolish king, knowing that he will enter the fire through womankind, is on his way. I will give him his life." So he took Suja, daughter of the Asuras, and went to Benares. He became a he-goat, and made her a she-goat. And resolving that the people should not see them, he stood before the king's chariot. The king and the Sind asses yoked in the chariot saw him, but none else saw him. For the sake of starting talk he was as if making love with the she-goat. One of the Sind asses yoked in the chariot seeing him said, "Friend goat, we have heard before, but not seen, that goats are stupid and shameless. But you are doing, with all of us looking on, this thing that should be done in secret and in a private place, and are not ashamed. What we have heard before agrees with this that we see." And so he spoke the first stanza. "Goats are stupid," says the wise man, "and the words are surely true. This one knows not he's parading what in secret he should do." The goat hearing him spoke two stanzas. "O Sir Donkey, think and realize your own stupidity. You're tied with ropes, your jaw is wrenched, and very downcast is your eye. When you're loosed, you don't escape, sir. That's a stupid habit too. And that Sanaki you carry, he's more stupid still than you." The king understood the talk of both animals, and hearing it he quickly sent away the chariot. The ass hearing the goat's talk spoke the fourth stanza. "Well, Sir King of Goats, you fully know my great stupidity. But how Sanaka is stupid, prithee do explain to me." The goat explaining this spoke the fifth stanza. "He who his own special treasure on his wife will throw away, cannot keep her faithful ever, and his life he must betray." The king hearing his words said, "King of Goats, you will surely act for my advantage. Tell me now what is right for me to do." Then the goat said, "King, to all animals no one is dearer than self. It is not good to destroy oneself and abandon the honor one has gained for the sake of anything that is dear." So he spoke the sixth stanza. "A king like thee may have conceived desire, and yet renounced it if his life's the cost. Life is the chief thing. What can man seek higher? If life's secured, desires need ne'er be crossed." So the Bodhisattva exhorted the king. The king delighted asked, "King of Goats, whence come you?" "I am Saka, O king, come to save you from death out of pity for you." "King of gods, I promised to give her the charm. What am I to do now?" "There is no need for the ruin of both of you. You say, it is the way of the craft, and have her beaten with some blows. By this means she will not get it." The king said, "It is well," and agreed. The Bodhisattva after exhortation to the king went to Saka's heaven. The king went to the garden, had the queen summoned and then said, "Lady, will you have the charm?" "Yes, lord." "Then go through the usual custom." "What custom?" "100 stripes on the back, but you must not make a sound." She consented through greed for the charm. The king made his slaves take whips and beat her on both sides. She endured 2 or 3 stripes and then cried, "I don't want the charm." The king said, "You would have killed me to get the charm." And so flogging the skin off her back he sent her away. After that she could not bear to talk of it again. At the end of the lesson the master declared the truths, and identified the birth. At the end of the truths, the brother was established in the first path. At that time the king was the discontented brother, the queen his former wife, the steed Sariputta, and Saka was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 387, Suci Jataka. Quickly threaded, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning the perfection of wisdom. The occasion of the tale will be given in the Mahamagga. The master addressed the brethren. This is not the first time the Tathagata is wise and skilled in devices. And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in the kingdom of Kasi in a smith's family. and when he grew up he became excellent in the craft. His parents were poor. Not far from their village was another smith's village of 1,000 houses. The principal smith of the 1,000 was a favorite of the king, rich and of great substance. His daughter was exceedingly beautiful, like to a nymph of heaven, with all the auspicious marks of a lady of the land. People came from the villages round to have razors, axes, plowshares and goads made, and generally saw that maiden. When they went back to their own villages, they praised her beauty in the places where men sit and elsewhere. The Bodhisattva, being attracted by merely hearing of her, thought, "I will make her my wife." So he took iron of the best kind, and made one delicate strong needle which pierced dice and floated on water. Then he made a sheath for it of the same kind and pierced dice with it. And in the same way he made 7 sheaths. How he made them is not to be told, for such work prospers through the greatness of Bodhisattva's knowledge. Then he put the needle in a tube, and placing it in a case he went to that village, and asked for the street where the head smith's house was. Then standing at the door he said, "Who will buy for money from my hand a needle of this kind?" Describing the needle. And so standing by the head smith's house, he spoke the first stanza, quickly threaded, smooth and straight, polished with emery, sharp of point and delicate. Needles, who will buy? After this he praised it again and spoke the second stanza, quickly threaded, strong and straight, rounded properly, iron they will penetrate. Needles, who will buy? At that moment the maiden was fanning her father with a palm leaf, as he lay on a little bed to allay discomfort after his early meal, and hearing the Bodhisattva's sweet voice, as if she had been sickened by a fresh lump of meat, and had the discomfort extinguished by 1,000 pots of water, she said, "Who is this hawking needles with sweet voice in a village of smiths? For what business has he come? I will find out." So laying down the palm fan she went out and spoke with him outside, standing in the veranda. The purpose of Bodhisattva's prospers. It was for her sake he had come to that village. She speaking with him said, "Young man, dwellers in all the kingdom come to this village for needles and the like. It is in folly you wish to sell needles in a village of smiths. Though you declare the praise of your needle all day, no one will take it from your hand. If you wish to get a price, go to another village." So she spoke 2 stanzas. "Our hooks are sold both up and down. Men know our needles well. We all are smiths in this good town. Needles, who can sell? In iron work we have renown. In weapons we excel. We all are smiths in this good town. Needles, who can sell?" The Bodhisattva hearing her words said, "Lady, you say this not knowing and in ignorance." And so he spoke 2 stanzas. "Though all are smiths in this good town, yet skill can needles sell. For masters in the craft will own a first-rate article. Lady, if once your father know this needle made by me, on me your hand he would bestow, and all his property." The head smith hearing all their talk called his daughter and asked, "Who is that you are talking to?" "Father, a man selling needles." "Then call him here." She went and called him. The Bodhisattva saluted the head smith and stood by. The head smith asked, "Of what village are you?" "I am of such a village and son of such a smith." "Why are you come here?" "To sell needles." "Come, let us see your needle." The Bodhisattva, wishing to declare his qualities among them all, said, "Is not a thing seen in the midst of all better than one seen by each singly?" "Quite right, friend." So he gathered all the smiths together and in their midst said, "Sir, take the needle." "Master, have an anvil brought and a bronze dish full of water." This was done. The Bodhisattva took the needle tube from the wrapper and gave it to them. The head smith taking it asked, "Is this the needle?" "No, it is not the needle, it is the sheath." The examining could not see end nor tip. The Bodhisattva, taking it from them, drew off the sheath with his nail, and showing it to the people with, "This is the needle, this is the sheath." He put the needle in the master's hand, and the sheath at his feet. Again when the master said, "This is the needle, I suppose," he answered, "This too is a needle sheath." Then he struck it off with his nail, and so he laid 6 sheaths in succession at the head smith's feet, and saying, "Here is the needle," laid it on his hand. The 1,000 smiths snapped their fingers in delight, and the waving of cloths began. Then the head smith asked, "Friend, what is the strength of this needle?" "Master, have this anvil raised up by a strong man, and a water vessel set under the anvil." Then strike the needle straight into the anvil. He had this done and struck the needle by the point into the anvil. The needle piercing the anvil lay across on the surface of the water, not moving a hair's breadth up or down. All the smiths said, "We have never heard all this time even by rumor that there are such smiths as this." So they snapped their fingers and waved 1,000 cloths. The head smith called his daughter, and in the midst of the assembly saying, "This maiden is a suitable match for you," he poured water on them, and gave her away. And afterwards when the head smith died, the Bodhisattva became head smith in the village. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. The smith's daughter was Rahula's mother. The clever young smith was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 388. Tundila Jataka. Something strange today, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a brother who feared death. He was born in Savatthi of good family, and was ordained in the faith. But he feared death, and when he heard even a little moving of a bough, or falling of a stick or voice of bird or beast or any such thing, he was frightened by the fear of death, and went away shaking like a hare wounded in the belly. The brethren in the hall of truth began to discuss, saying, "Sirs, they say a certain brother fearing death runs away shaking when he hears even a little sound. Now to beings in this world death is certain, life uncertain, and should not this be wisely borne in mind?" The master found that this was their subject, and that the brother allowed he was afraid of death. So he said, "Brethren, he is not afraid of death for the first time." And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was conceived by a wild sow. In due time she brought forth 2 male young. One day she took them, and lay down in a pit. An old woman of a village at the gate of Benares was coming home with a basket full of cotton from the cotton field, and tapping the ground with her stick. The sow heard the sound, and in fear of death left her young and ran away. The old woman saw the young pigs, and feeling towards them as to children of her own, she put them in the basket, and took them home. Then she called the elder Mahatundala Big Snout, the younger Kulatundala Little Snout, and reared them like children. In time they grew up and became fat. When the old woman was asked to sell them for money, she answered, "They are my children," and would not sell them. On a certain feast day some lewd fellows were drinking strong drink, and when their meat was done they considered where they could get meat. Finding out that there were pigs in the old woman's house, they took money and going there said, "Mother, take this money and give us one of those pigs." She said, "Enough, young men. Are there people who would give their children to buyers to eat their flesh?" And so refused them. The fellows said, "Mother, pigs cannot be children of men, give them to us." But they could not get this though they asked again and again. Then they made the old woman drink strong drink, and when she was drunk saying, "Mother, what will you do with the pigs? Take the money and spend it." They put pieces of money in her hand. She took the pieces saying, "I cannot give you Mahatundala, take Kulatundala." "Where is he?" "There he is in that bush." "Call him." "I don't see any food for him." The fellows sent for a vessel of rice at a price. The old woman took it, and filling the pig's trough which stood at the door she waited by it. 30 fellows stood by with nooses in their hands. The old woman called him, "Come, little Kulatundala, come." Mahatundala, hearing this, thought, "All this time mother has never given the call to Kulatundala. She always calls me first. Certainly some danger must have arisen for us today." He told his younger brother saying, "Brother, mother is calling you, go and find out." He went out, and seeing them standing by the food trough he thought, "Death has come upon me today." And so in fear of death he turned back shaking to his brother. And when he came back he could not contain himself but reeled about shaking. Mahatundala seeing him said, "Brother, you are shaking today and reeling and watching the entrance. Why are you doing so?" He, explaining the thing that he had seen, spoke the first stanza. "Something strange today I fear. The trough is full and mistress by. Men, noose in hand, are standing near. To eat appears a jeopardy." Then the Bodhisattva hearing him said, "Brother Kulatundala, the purpose for which my mother rears pigs all this time has today come to its fulfillment. Do not grieve, And so with sweet voice and the ease of a Buddha he expounded the law and spoke 2 stanzas. You fear, and look for aid and quake. But helpless, whither can you flee? We're fattened for our flesh's sake. Eat Tundila and cheerfully. Plunge bold into the crystal pool. Wash all the stains of sweat away. You'll find our ointment wonderful, whose fragrance never can decay. As he considered the 10 perfections, setting the perfection of love before him as his guide, and uttered the first line, his voice reached and extended to Benares over the whole 12 leagues. At the instant of hearing it, the people of Benares from kings and viceroys downwards came, and those who did not come stood listening in their houses. The king's men breaking down the bush leveled the ground and scattered sand. The drunkenness left the lewd fellows, and throwing away the nooses they stood listening to the law. And the old woman's drunkenness left her also. The Bodhisattva began to preach the law to Kulatundila among the multitude. Kulatundila hearing him thought, my brother says so to me. But it is never our custom to plunge into the pool, and by bathing to wash away sweat from our bodies, and after taking away old stain to get new ointment. Why does my brother say so to me? So he spoke the 4th stanza. But what is that fair crystal pool? And what the stains of sweat, I pray? And what the ointment wonderful, whose fragrance never can decay? The Bodhisattva hearing this said, then listen with attentive ear. And so expounding the law with the ease of a Buddha he spoke these stanzas. The law is the fair crystal pool. Sin is the stain of sweat, they say. Virtue's the ointment wonderful, whose fragrance never will decay. Men that lose their life are glad. Men that keep it feel annoy. Men should die and not be sad, as at mid-month's festal joy. So the great being expounded the law in a sweet voice with a Buddha's charm. The multitude by thousands snapped their fingers and waved their cloths, and the air was full of the cry, good, good. The king of Benares honored the Bodhisattva with royal place, and giving glory to the old woman, he caused both pigs to be bathed in perfumed water, and clothed with robes, and ornamented with jewels on the neck, and put them in the position of his sons in the city. So he guarded them with a great retinue. The Bodhisattva gave the 5 commands to the king, and all the inhabitants of Benares and Kasi kept the commands. The Bodhisattva preached the law to them on the holy days, new and full moon, and sitting in judgment decided cases. While he lived there were no bringers of unjust suits. Afterwards the king died. The Bodhisattva did the last honors to his body. Then he caused a book of judgments to be written and said, by observing this book ye should settle suits. So having expounded the law to the people and preached to them with zeal, he went to the forest with Kulatundila, while they all wept and lamented. Then the Bodhisattva's preaching went on for 60,000 years. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. At the end of the truths the brother who feared death was established in the fruition of the first path. In those days the king was Ananda, Kulatundila was the brother who fears death. The multitude was the congregation, Mahatundila myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 389, Suvannakkhatta Jataka. Gold-clawed creature, etc. The master told this tale when dwelling in the bamboo grove, of Ananda's dying for his sake. The occasion is told in the Kandhala birth about the hiring of bowmen, and in the Kulahamsa birth about the roar of the elephant Dhanapala. Then they began a discussion in the Hall of Truth. Sirs, has the elder Ananda, treasurer of the law, who attained all the wisdom possible to one still under discipline, given up his life for the perfect Buddha when Dhanapala came? The master came and was told the subject of their discussion. He said, brother, in former times also Ananda gave up his life for me. And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time, there was a Brahmin village called Salandiya on the east side of Rajagaha. The Bodhisattva was born there in that village in a Brahmin farmer's family. When he grew up he settled down, and worked a farm of 1,000 karisas, in a district of Magadha, to the northeast of the village. One day he had gone to the field with his men, and giving them orders to plow he went to a great pool at the end of the field to wash his face. In that pool there lives a crab of golden hue, beautiful and charming. The Bodhisattva having chewed his toothpick went down into the pool. When he was washing his mouth, the crab came near. Then he lifted up the crab, and taking it laid it in his outer garment. And after doing his work in the field, he put the crab again in the pool, and went home. From that time, when going to the field, he always went first to that pool, laid the crab in his outer garment, and then went about his work. So a strong feeling of confidence arose between them. The Bodhisattva came to the field constantly. Now in his eyes were seen the 5 graces, and the 3 circles very pure. A she-crow in a nest on a palm in that corner of the field saw his eyes, and wishing to eat them said to the he-crow, "Husband, I have a longing." "Longing for what?" "I wish to eat the eyes of a certain Brahmin." "Your longing is a bad one. Who will be able to get them for you?" "I know that you can't. But in the ant hill near our tree there lives a black snake. Wait on him. He will bite the Brahmin and kill him. Then you will tear out his eyes and bring them to me." He agreed and afterwards waited on the black snake. The crab was grown great at the time when the seed sown by the Bodhisattva was sprouting. One day the snake said to the crow, "Friend, you are always waiting on me. What can I do for you?" "Sir, your female slave has taken a longing for the eyes of the master of this field. I wait on you in hopes of getting his eyes through your favor." The snake said, "Well, that is not difficult, you shall get them," and so encouraged him. Next day the snake lay waiting for the Brahmin's coming, hidden in the grass, by the boundary of the field where he came. The Bodhisattva entering the pool, and washing his mouth, felt a return of affection for the crab, and embracing it laid it in his outer garment, and went to the field. The snake saw him come, and rushing swiftly forward bit him in the flesh of the calf, and having made him fall on the spot fled to his ant hill. The fall of the Bodhisattva, the spring of the golden crab from the garment, and the perching of the crow on the Bodhisattva's breast followed close on each other. The crow perching put his beak into the Bodhisattva's eyes. The crab thought, "It was through this crow that the danger came on my friend. If I seize him the snake will come." So seizing the crow by the neck with its claw firmly as if in a vice, he got weary, and then loosed him a little. The crow called on the snake, "Friend, why do you forsake me and run away? This crab troubles me, come ere I die." And so spoke the first stanza. Gold-clawed creature with projecting eyes, tarn-bred, hairless, clad in bony shell, he has caught me, hear my woeful cries. Why do you leave a mate that loves you well? The snake hearing him, made its hood large and came consoling the crow. The master explaining the case in his perfect wisdom spoke the second stanza. The snake fell on the crab amain. His friend he'd not forsake. Puffing his mighty hood he came, but the crab turned on the snake. The crab being weary then loosed him a little. The snake thinking, "Crabs do not eat the flesh of crows nor of snakes, then for what reason does this one seize us?" In inquirers spoke the third stanza. "'Tis not for the sake of food. Crabs would seize a snake or crow. Tell me, you whose eyes protrude, why you take and grip us so?" Hearing him, the crab explaining the reason spoke 2 stanzas. "This man took me from the pool. Great the kindness he has done. If he dies my grief is full. Serpent, he and I are one. Seeing I am grown so great, all would kill me willingly. Fat and sweet and delicate, crows at sight would injure me." Hearing him the snake thought, "By some means I must deceive him and free myself and the crow." So to deceive him he spoke the 6th stanza. "If you have seized us only for his sake, I'll take the poison from him. Let him rise. Quick, from the crow and me your pincers take. Till then the poison sinking deep he dies." Hearing him the crab thought, "This one wishes to make me let these 2 go by some means and then run away. He knows not my skill and device. Now I will loosen my claw so that the snake can move, but I will not free the crow." So he spoke the 7th stanza. "I'll free the snake, but not the crow. The crow shall be a hostage bound. Never shall I let him go, till my friend be safe and sound." So saying he loosened his claw to let the snake go at his ease. The snake took away the poison, and left the Bodhisattva's body free from it. He rose up well, and stood in his natural hue. The crab thinking, "If these 2 be well there will be no prosperity for my friend, I will kill them," crushed both their heads like lotus buds with his claws and took the life from them. The she-crow fled away from the place. The Bodhisattva spiked the snake's body with a stick and threw it on a bush, let the golden crab go free in the pool, bathed, and then went to Salandia. From that time there was still greater friendship between him and the crab. The lesson ended. The master declared the truths, and identifying the birth spoke the last stanza. Mara was the dusky serpent, Devdutta was the crow, Godananda was the crab, and I the Brahmin long ago. At the end of the truths many reached the first path, and the other paths. The female crow was Kammanavika, though this is not mentioned in the last stanza. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 390, Mayha Jataka. Did we joy? Etc. The master told this while dwelling in Jetavana, of a stranger merchant. There was in Savatthi a stranger merchant, rich and of great substance. He did not enjoy his wealth himself nor give it to others. If choice food of fine flavors was served he would not eat it, eating only broth of rice dust with sour gruel. If silken clothes perfumed with incense were brought him he had them removed, and wore clothes of coarse hair cloth for sugar. If a chariot adorned with jewels and gold, and drawn by high-bred horses were brought him, he had it taken away, and went in a broken-down old chariot with a parasol of leaves overhead. All his life he did nothing with gifts or the other merits, and when he died he was born in the hell Roruva. His substance was airless. And the king's men carried it into the palace in 7 days and nights. When it was carried in, the king went after breakfast to Jetavana, and saluted the master. When he was asked why Lai did not wait regularly on Buddha, he answered, Lord, a stranger merchant has died at Savatthi. 7 days have been spent in carrying his wealth, to which he left no heir, into my house. But though he had all that wealth he neither enjoyed it himself nor gave it to others. His wealth was like lotus tanks guarded by demons. One day he fell into the jaws of death, after refusing to enjoy the flavor of choice meats and the like. Now why did that selfish and undeserving man gain all that wealth? And for what reason did he not incline his thoughts to the enjoyment of it? This was the question he put to the master. Great king, the reason why he gained his wealth and yet did not enjoy it, was this. And so at his request the master told a tale of old times. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, there was an unbelieving selfish merchant in Benares. He gave nothing to anyone, he provided for no one. One day going to wait on the king he saw a Paksabuddha, named Tagarasiki, begging and saluting him he asked, Sir, have you got alms? The Paksabuddha said, Am I not begging, merchant? The merchant gave orders to his man. Go, take him to my house, set him on my seat, and give him his bowl full of the food prepared for me. The man took him to the house, set him down, and told the merchant's wife. She gave him his bowl full of food of excellent flavors. He taking the food and leaving the house went along the street. The merchant, returning from court, saw him and saluting asked him if he had got food. I have, merchant. The merchant, looking at his bowl, could not reconcile his will to it, but thinking, had my slaves or work people eaten this food of mine they would have done me hard service. Alas, it is a loss for me. And he could not make the afterthought perfect. Now giving is rich in fruit only to one, who can make the 3 thoughts perfect. Did we joy to feel the wish to give? Give the gift and give it cheerfully. Ne'er regret the giving while we live. Children born of us would never die. Joy before the bounties given, giving cheerfully. Pleasure at the thought thereafter. That is perfect charity. So the stranger merchant gained much wealth, by reason of his giving alms to Tagarasiki, but he could not enjoy his wealth, because he could not make his afterthought pure. Lord, why did he have no son? The master said, O king, this was the cause of his having no son. And so at his request he told a tale of old. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a merchant's family worth 80 crores. When he grew up, at his parents' death he provided for his younger brother, and carried on the house. He made an alms chamber at the house door, and lived as a householder giving much in alms. One son was born to him, and when the son could walk on his feet, he saw the misery of desires, and the blessing of renunciation. So handing over all his substance together with his wife and child to his younger brother, he exhorted him to continue almsgiving with diligence. Then he became an ascetic, and gaining the faculties and attainments he dwelt in the Himalaya. The younger brother took that one son, but seeing him grow up he thought, if my brother's son lives, the estate will be divided into 2 parts. I will kill my brother's son. So one day, sinking him in a river, he killed him. After he had bathed and come home, his brother's wife asked him, "Where is my boy? He was disporting himself in the river. I looked for him but could not see him." She wept and said nothing. The Bodhisattva, knowing of this matter, thought, I will make this business public. And so going through the air and lighting at Benares in fair raiment under an upper, he stood at the door. Not seeing the alms chamber, he thought, that wicked man has destroyed the chamber. The younger brother, hearing of his coming, came and saluted the Bodhisattva, and taking him up to the roof gave him good food to eat. And when the meal was over, seated for friendly talk, he said, "My son does not appear. Where is he?" "Dead, my lord." "In what way?" "At a bathing place, but I do not know the exact way." "Not know, thou wicked man? Your deed was known to me. Did you not kill him in that way? Will you be able to keep that wealth when destroyed by kings and others? What difference is there between you and the Mayha bird?" So the Bodhisattva, expounding the law with the ease of a Buddha, spoke these stanzas. There is a bird called Mayhaka, in mountain cave it lives. On peepal trees with ripening fruit. Mine, mine the cry it gives. The other birds, while thus he plains, in flocks about him fly. They eat the fruit, but still goes on the Mayha's plaintive cry. And even so a single man enormous wealth may win, and yet may not divide it fair between himself and kin. Not once enjoyment does he reap of raiment or of food, of perfumes or of garlands gay, nor does his kinsfolk good. Mine, mine, he whimpers as he guards his treasures greedily. But kings or robbers, or his heirs that wish to see him die, pillage his wealth, yet still goes on the miser's plaintive cry. A wise man, gaining riches great, is helpful to his kin. 'Tis thus he'll win repute on earth, and heaven hereafter win. So the great being, expounding to him the law, made him renew the alms-giving, and going to the Himalaya pursued meditation without interruption, and so went to the Brahmaloka heaven. After the lesson, the master said, "So, great king, the stranger merchant had neither son nor daughter for all that time because he killed his brother's son." And then he identified the birth. The younger brother was the stranger merchant. The elder was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada, 391, Dhajavihetha Jataka, noble of face, etc. The master told this while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning his going about for the whole world's good. The occasion will appear in the Mahakanya birth. Then the master said, "Brethren, this is not the first time the Tathagata has gone about for the world's good." And so told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, the Bodhisattva was Saka. At that time a wizard, using his magic, came at midnight and corrupted the chief queen of Benares. Her handmaids knew of this. She herself went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, some man enters the royal chamber at midnight and corrupts me. Could you make any mark on him?" "I can." So she got a bowl of real vermilion. And when the man came at night, and was going away after enjoyment, she set the mark of her 5 fingers on his back, and in the morning told the king. The king gave orders to his men to go, and looking everywhere bring a man with a vermilion mark on his back. Now the wizard, after his misconduct at night, stands by day in a cemetery on 1 foot worshipping the sun. The king's men saw him and surrounded him. But he, thinking that his action had become known to them, used his magic and flew away in the air. The king asked his men when they came back from seeing this, "Did you see him?" "Yes, we saw him." "Who is he?" "A brother, your Majesty." For after his misconduct at night, he lived by day in disguise of a brother. The king thought, "These men go about by day in ascetic's garb and misconduct themselves at night." So being angry with the brethren, he adopted heretical views, and sent round a proclamation by drum that all the brethren must depart from his kingdom, and that his men would punish them wherever found. All the ascetics fled from the kingdom of Kasi, which was 300 leagues in extent, to other royal cities, and there was no one, righteous Buddhist or Brahmin, to preach to the men of all Kasi, so that the men without preaching became savage, and being averse to charity and the commandments were born in a state of punishment for the most part as they died, and never got birth in heaven. Saka, not seeing any new gods, reflected on what the reason might be, and saw that it was the expulsion of the brethren from the kingdom by the king of Benares owing to his adopting heretical views in anger about the wizard. Then he thought, except myself there is no one who can destroy this king's heresy. I will be the helper of the king and his subjects. So he went to the Paksabuddhas in the Nandiyamiga cave and said, Sirs, give me an old Paksabuddha. I wish to convert the kingdom of Kasi. He got the senior among them. When he took his bowl and robe, Saka set him before, and came himself after, making respectful salutation, and venerating the Paksabuddha. Himself becoming a beautiful young brother, he went thrice round the whole city from end to end, and then coming to the king's gate he stood in the air. They told the king, Your Majesty, there is a beautiful young brother with a priest standing in the air at the king's gate. The king rose from his seat and standing at the lattice said, Young brother, why do you, who are beautiful, stand venerating that ugly priest and holding his bowl and robes? And so talking with him he spoke the first stanza. Noble of face, you make obeisance low. Behind one mean, and poor to sight you go. Is he your better or your equal, say? Declare to us your name and his we pray. The Saka answered, Great king, priests are in the place of teacher. Therefore it is not right that I should utter his name. But I will tell you my own name. So he spoke the second stanza. Gods do not tell the lineage and the name of saints devout and perfect in the way. As for myself, my title I proclaim. Saka, the Lord whom 30 gods obey. The king hearing this asked in the third stanza, what was the blessing of venerating the brother? He who beholds the saint of perfect merits, and walks behind him with obeisance low. I ask, O king of gods, what he inherits? What blessings will another life bestow? Saka replied in the fourth stanza, He who beholds the saint of perfect merits, who walks behind him with obeisance low, great praise from men in this world he inherits, and death to him the path of heaven will show. The king hearing Saka's words gave up his own heretical views, and in delight spoke the fifth stanza. O fortune's sun on me today doth rise. Our eyes have seen thy majesty divine. Thy saint appears, O Saka, to our eyes, and many a virtuous deed will now be mine. Saka, hearing him praising his master, spoke the sixth stanza. Surely 'tis good to venerate the wise, to knowledge who their learned thoughts incline. Now that the saint and I have met thine eyes, O king, let many a virtuous deed be thine. Hearing this the king spoke the last stanza. From anger free, with grace in every thought, I'll lend an ear whenever strangers sue. I take thy counsel good, I bring to naught my pride and serve thee, Lord, with homage due. Having said so he came down from the terrace, saluted the Paksabuddha and stood on one side. The Paksabuddha sat cross-legged in the air and said, Great king, that wizard was no brother. Henceforward recognize that the world is not vanity, that there are good Buddhists and Brahmins, and so give gifts, practice morality, keep the holy days, preaching to the king. Saka also by his power stood in the air, and preaching to the townsfolk, henceforward be zealous. He sent round proclamation by drum, that the Buddhists and Brahmins who had fled should return. Then both went back to their own place. The king stood firm in the admonition, and did good works. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. At that time the Paksabuddha reached nirvana. The king was Ananda, Saka was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 392. Bhisapuppha Jataka. You were never, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a certain brother. The story is that the brother had left Jetavana, and dwelt in the Kosala kingdom near a certain wood. One day he went down into a lotus pool, and seeing a lotus in flower he stood to leeward and smelt it. Then the goddess who dwelt in that part of the forest frightened him, saying, "Sir, you are a thief of odors. This is a kind of theft." He went back in a fright to Jetavana, and saluted the master and sat down. "Where have you been staying, brother?" "In such and such a wood, and the goddess frightened me in such and such a way." The master said, "You are not the first who have been frightened by a goddess when smelling a flower. Sages of old have been frightened in like manner." And at the brother's request he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born in a Brahmin family of a village in Kasi. When he grew up he learned the arts at Takasila, and afterwards became an ascetic, and lived near a lotus pool. One day he went down into the pool, and stood smelling a lotus in full flower. A goddess who was in a hollow in a trunk of a tree alarming him spoke the first stanza. "You were never given that flower you smell, though it's only a single bloom. 'Tis a species of larceny, reverend sir, you are stealing its perfume." Then the Bodhisattva spoke the second stanza. "I neither take nor break the flower. From afar I smell the bloom. I cannot tell on what pretense you say I steal perfume." At the same moment a man was digging in the pool for lotus fibers, and breaking the lotus plants. The Bodhisattva seeing him said, "You call a man thief if he smells the flower from afar. Why do you not speak to that other man?" So in talk with her he spoke the third stanza. "A man who digs the lotus roots and breaks the stalks I see. Why don't you call the conduct of that man disorderly?" The goddess, explaining why she did not speak to him, spoke the fourth and fifth stanzas. "Disgusting like a nurse's dress are men disorderly. I have no speech with men like him, but I deign to speak to thee. When a man is free from evil stains and seeks for purity, a sin like a hair tip shows on him like a dark cloud in the sky." So alarmed by her the Bodhisattva in emotion spoke the sixth stanza. "Surely, fairy, you know me well, to pity me you deign. If you see me do the like offense, pray speak to me again." Then the goddess spoke to him the seventh stanza. "I am not here to serve you, no hireling folk are we. Find brother, for yourself the path to reach felicity." So exhorting him she entered her own abode. The Bodhisattva entered on high meditation, and was born in the Brahmaloka world. The lesson ended, the master declared the truths, and identified the birth. At the end of the truths, the brother was established in the fruit of the first path. At that time the goddess was Uppalavana, the ascetic myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipada. 393, Vighasa Jataka. Happy life is theirs, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in the East Garden, concerning some brethren who were given to amusement. The great Moggallana had shaken their dwelling and alarmed them. The brethren sat discussing their fault in the Hall of Truth. The master being told this said to them, "They are not given to amusement for the first time." And so told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was Saka. 7 brothers in a certain village of Kasi, seeing the evil of desires had renounced them and become ascetics. They dwelt in Mejharana, but lived in various kinds of amusement, not practicing devotion diligently, and being of full habit of body. Saka, king of gods, said, "I will alarm them." And so he became a parrot, came to their dwelling place and perching on a tree spoke the first stanza to alarm them. Happy life is theirs who live on remnants left from charity. Praise in this world is their lot, and in the next felicity. Then one of them hearing the parrot's words called to the rest, and spoke the second stanza. Should not wise men listen when a parrot speaks in human tongue? Hearken, brethren. 'Tis our praises clearly that this bird has sung. Then the parrot denying this spoke the third stanza. Not your praises I am singing, carrion eaters, list to me. Refuse is the food you eat, not remnants left from charity. When they heard him, they all together spoke the fourth stanza. 7 years ordained, with duly tonsured hair. In Mejharana here we spend our days, living on remnants. If you blame our fare, who is it then you praise? The great being spoke the fifth stanza, putting them to shame. Leavings of the lion, tiger, ravening beast are your supply. Refuse truly. though ye call it remnants left from charity. Hearing him the ascetics said, If we are not eaters of remnants, then who pray are? Then he telling them the true meaning spoke the sixth stanza. They who giving alms to priests and Brahmins, wants to satisfy, eat the rest. 'Tis they who live on remnants left from charity. So the Bodhisattva put them to shame, and went to his own place. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. At that time the 7 brothers were the sportive brethren. Saka was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipata. 394. Vataka Jataka. Oil and butter, etc. The master told this while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a greedy brother. Finding that he was greedy, the master said to him, This is not the first time you are greedy. Once before through greed in Benares you were not satisfied with carcasses of elephants, oxen, horses and men. And in hopes of getting better food you went to the forest. And so he told an old tale. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born as a quail, and lived in the forest on rude grass and seeds. At the time there was in Benares a greedy crow who, not content with carcasses of elephants and other animals, went to the forest in hopes of better food. Eating wild fruits there he saw the Bodhisattva and thinking, This quail is very fat. I fancy he eats sweet food. I will ask him of his food and eating it become fat myself. He perched on a bough above the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva, without being asked, gave him greeting and spoke the first stanza. Oil and butter are your victuals, nuncle. Rich your food, I trow. Tell me then what is the reason of your leanness, Master Crow. Hearing his words the crow spoke 3 stanzas. I dwell in midst of many foes, my heart goes pit-a-pat. In terror as I seek my food. How can a crow be fat? Crows spend their lives in fear, their wits for mischief ever keen. The bits they pick are not enough, good quail, that's why I'm lean. Rude grass and seeds are all your food. There's little richness there. Then tell me why you're fat, good quail, on such a scanty fare. The Bodhisattva hearing him spoke these stanzas, explaining the reason of his fatness. I have content and easy mind, short distances to go. I live on anything I get, and so I'm fat, good crow. Content of mind, and happiness with little care of heart. A standard easily attained, that life's the better part. After the lesson, the master declared the truths, and identified the birth. At the end of the truths the brother was established in the fruition of the first path. At that time the crow was the greedy brother, the quail was myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 6 Kanipata. 395. Kaka Jataka. Our old friend, etc. The master told this tale while dwelling in Jetavana, concerning a greedy brother. The occasion is as above. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was a pigeon, and lived in a nest basket in the kitchen of a Benares merchant. A crow became intimate with him, and lived there also. Here the story is to be expanded. The cook pulled out the crow's feathers and sprinkled him with flour. Then piercing a cowrie, he hung it on the crow's neck, and threw him into a basket. The Bodhisattva came from the wood, and seeing him made a jest and spoke the first stanza. Our old friend. Look at him. A jewel bright he wears. His beard in gallant trim. How gay our friend appears. The crow hearing him spoke the second stanza. My nails and hair had grown so fast. They hampered me in all I did. A barber came along at last, and of superfluous hair I'm rid. Then the Bodhisattva spoke the third stanza. Granted you got a barber then, who has cropped your hair so well. Round your neck, will you explain? What's that tinkling like a bell? Then the crow uttered 2 stanzas. Men of fashion wear a gem. Round the neck, it's often done. I am imitating them. Don't suppose it's just for fun. If you're really envious of my beard that's trimmed so true, I can get you barbered thus. You may have the jewel too. The Bodhisatta hearing him spoke the sixth stanza. Nay, 'tis ye they best become. Gem and beard that's trimmed so true. I find your presence troublesome. I go with a good day to you. With these words he flew up and went elsewhere. And the crow died then and there. After the lesson, the master declared the truths and identified the birth. After the truths, the greedy brother was established in the fruition of the third path. At that time the crow was the greedy brother, the pigeon was myself.